What are secretive Nefer's biggest pros and cons? That's what I'm here to tell you today. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. Kicking things right off, this lady is going to be amazing in single target. Now, I don't want you to get it twisted. She's amazing in single target, while her AoE doesn't actually suffer that much in comparison. That's right, she is able to be a really good single target Dendro DPS while still being very competent in AoE, and this is quite impressive in my opinion. Now, naturally, Bloom teams have always been associated with inherently being AoE focused, so this is a really cool way to round out your Dendro team, because it's going to mean that you're going to be able to tackle single target scenarios with absolute ease. She is the prime choice in this instance. The only situation in which you would rather use Nilou over Nefer is if it's really AoE focused, and even then, Nefer's still going to do just fine, because like I said, what really emphasizes this pro to me is not necessarily just the fact that her single target is good, it's the fact that her single target is excellent while still thriving in AoE scenarios. She is excellent for that reason. If you invested into Lauma and you've been enjoying how good your AoE Dendro has been recently, then investing into Nefer is only going to make it all better. Furthermore, she's also just a really good DPS in general. If you pulled for Lauma, then you are going to be impressed with her performance. She's honestly very strong, and I think that she's going to be a very big contender for a top DPS down the line whenever we eventually get Columbina. Even on launch, whenever we do get her, I personally think that her performance with Lauma is going to be very impressive. All around, a very strong main DPS character. Now, she's not somebody that I would just pull for randomly if you just joined the game, you're looking for a new main DPS, if you weren't able to snag Lauma before, because I will discuss this more in detail later, but she really wants Lauma, and this isn't really a Flynn situation where you're able to get away with not having that. It's closer to a Skirk and a Escoffier situation, but we'll get there. For now, just know that her damage is absolutely busted, provided that you have the right tools on hand. Another pro of hers is that she directly replaces Nilou in basically all teams of this variety. You can still use Nilou if you really want to, and she's still going to be really good in heavily AoE scenarios. However, for the most part, Nefer is going to be your best bet these days. She is really strong, and she's basically going to be able to do everything that she does, but better, while having amazing single target. So if you were looking for a direct upgrade to your Bloom teams, then yeah, Nefer is going to get the job done just fine for you. In fact, she's going to get the job done excellently for you. I want to say that while Nefer is definitely specialized, she is amazing at what she does, and if you're somebody that really misses the glory days of Dendro, then I think pulling for this character is going to be right up your alley, because you're going to return to that time when Bloom felt like it destroyed absolutely everything, because if you were there for whenever Bloom first came out, it really was just that guy in AoE, and even though the meta is more single target centric these days, we can still definitely return to those glory days of it feeling really strong with Nefer. She is a Dendro character that is perfectly adapted to the modern meta climate, and because of that, if you're a really big Dendro fan in general, she ends up being a fantastic investment. Moreover, she has really good constellations, so if you're interested in high Primogem based investment for her, you're going to be impressed. To be fair, this is just kind of a common trend of modern units these days. They always tend to have really good constellations, this is nothing new. However, the reason why I'm praising Nefer in particular is because her constellations are honestly just as good as Flynn's are for him. Now, I will say, getting Nefer's constellations doesn't really fix having no Lauma. This is something that Flynn's C1 is able to fix for himself. However, it's not really able to do the same for Nefer, unfortunately. However, just in terms of pure damage increases, it's really good to invest into them if you're somebody that's super into her. She's still going to be absolutely busted at C0 though, so I wouldn't feel FOMO'd into getting them. I'm just saying that her high investment is really worth looking into if you've got the Primogems to spare and you're really interested in investing in Nefer in particular, so you will be impressed with her constellations, keep that in mind. And if you're wondering whether you go for her constellations or signature weapon first, well, she is going to have a craftable weapon, and that's another pro of hers. She's gonna have a decently cheap enough weapon option if you would like that, and it's not really going to be that much worse than her signature. However, I would say that if you're looking into high investment for her, if you're on her craftable, get her signature first, but if you have a good stat stick weapon, something that has really high crit damage and is a 5-star, or just really good crit in general, then you can go for the constellations first, because that's going to be better for you. It's just going to depend on where you're starting off. So weapon first if you're using a 4-star weapon, otherwise constellations. But either way, you just can't really go wrong with her high Primogem based investment. It's just really good in general, so you're going to be pleased with that. All around, that's a really good way to sum up this character. She is a very premium investment into Dendro. is she super niche in that sense? She is, in the sense of if you're not really invested into Dendro teams and you didn't invest into Lauma, then she's not really going to do much for you in particular because she's very much specialized for that particular thing, just like how Flynn's is very specialized for electrocharged in general. So keep that in mind when deciding to invest into Nefer. However, if that particular niche is of interest to you, then goodness, she is definitely going to fill your needs. However, as excellently powerful as this dealer of information is, we still need to discuss her flaws, with one of the key flaws being if you don't have Lauma, then just put the fries in the bag. She really wants Lauma for a multitude of reasons. Not only is Lauma able to make Dendro damage stronger thanks to her Dendro Red Shred, but she provides a Lunar Bloom damage reaction increase. There's also the crit that she provides for Lunar Bloom. She is genuinely just an absolutely broken teammate for Lauma, and like I said, this is generally worse than how it was for Flynn's and Nefer, and that was already a pretty drastic situation. And the thing is, at least you had something outside of Nefer with Fischl and Autoron, still a hella cope and still not anywhere near as good as Nefer. But it's basically just as cope with Nefer. If you don't have Lauma, then you use Nahida. That's another 5-star. And if you're not using Nahida, then oh freaking dear. Because then, at that point, genuinely just don't touch Nefer. And even with Nahida, I still don't think you should be touching Nefer. Because honestly, you really want that Lauma. If you don't have Lauma, I do genuinely think that Nefer is just skip. If she's your favorite waifu ever, then okay, go for it. But just know that you are not going to be happy with her performance whatsoever. She is extremely tied to your premium teammate. And while you could argue Flynn's was the same, he was still pretty good without a Nefer. He didn't need her, certainly a lot better with her, but wasn't a requirement. Whereas if Nefer, yeah, it is basically just a requirement, and if you don't have Lauma, then it's cooked. Not to mention that her team is just expensive in general. Not only do you really want Lauma, ideally, not even just ideally, you basically require Lauma, but you really also want Nahida, once again, another 5-star, and you ideally really want C6 Aino, C6 4-star, that's gonna take a hot minute to get. And you don't really have many other alternatives, and any alternatives you do have, well, they're also either going to be a 5-star or it's just going to be significantly worse than using her best in slot. So all around, you have a character that costs quite a lot to hit the ground running. Yes, she does have a craftable weapon. Her weapon options are definitely accessible, but her teams, not at all. She is definitely niche, she is definitely designed for a specific archetype, and if you stray away from her main teams, then you're gonna be missing out on quite a lot of damage. And that brings me on to my next point. Her teams are super rigid. What I mean by this is that you can't really experiment much with her teams. The teammates that she wants are super duper solid, and deviating from her norm is just going to make you lose out on a lot of damage. I would say that Flynn's was honestly similar in this aspect, because for example, you take Sucrose out of that guy's teams, he's missing out on a lot of damage all of a sudden. Let's take Skirk as an example. Yes, she really wants a Scoffier. That is where her restrictiveness lies. However, even though she really wants the Molding Chef, her actual teams are still quite open. There are plenty of Cryo and Hydro characters that you're able to pair with her. Yolan, Lady Farina, TDDS Mualani on 4-piece Cinder City, Shenhe, I've even been using All-Field Ganyu. You can genuinely use quite a multitude of different teams, and that's very nice, because even though you do basically require a Scoffier in order for that unit to feel strong, you still have that nice little bonus. You're still able to at least build her teams quite flexibly as long as you have a Scoffier. Whereas with Nefer, even if you have Lauma, you're still really limited in terms of options. You really want to use her best in slot, and anything else is just not going to be good. She is fantastic for her respective niche, I really do want to emphasize that. However, whether she is worth that level of restrictiveness and cost, that's gonna be up to you. And if you didn't get Lauma on her first banner, and you're just waiting on her now, you gotta get Lauma first before you even think of picking up Nefer, because otherwise, unless you're fine to just walk around with Nefer in the overworld, you're not gonna be happy. And finally, you're stuck using Prototype Amber Nahida as your sustain. Yeah, there is one way to fix it, and that would be by having C1 Lauma, because then that effectively turns her into the team sustain. So if you didn't pull for C1 Lauma, then you're gonna be trapped using Prototype Amber Nahida. Otherwise, you could use other defensive options like Zhongli or Kuke Shinobu. However, even then, it's just not going to be as good as using her best in slot. This was a similar issue that Flynn's had, where if you didn't pull for a Nefer, his teams were really annoying to play because you have to play Sustainless then, and there's not really any easy workaround for it. And unfortunately, we find ourselves in the same situation with Nefer. I'd say Nefer's situation is a little better than Flynn's because at least you can put Prototype Amber on the heater, but that's still really cope, and all around it's going to make our teams just feel not that comfortable to play. I think Nefer is definitely good at what she does, and if you really care about Dendro, you really want to restore it back to its glory days, then she's gonna be a good pull. But seriously, only get her if you have a respective gear. She is just going to suck without it. Hopefully this video was able to tell you Nefer's biggest pros and cons. This has been Juice, signing out, and good luck saving up for your attractive snake lady.